At the White House, President Reagan defended his policy of keeping the Marines in Lebanon and reiterated to a group of visiting journalists that the policy will continue. White House correspondent Leslie Stahl reports.
There were more than 200 men sleeping in that building. Many of the men were not wearing their dog tags. And the delay in notification of the families, and it must be a terrible, cruel additional punishment for these people who wait in suspense.
At a luncheon for out-of-town newsmen, the president spoke emotionally of the heartbreaking tragedy. But the White House is concerned that the American people want the Marines withdrawn. So Mr. Reagan explained his policy, saying the Marines will stay because the U.S. has vital interests in Lebanon.
The option that we cannot consider is withdrawing while their mission still remains.
Secretary of State Shultz told Congress today that Syria must bear a share of the responsibility for the attack, since the terrorists, identified as Iranians, operate from behind Syrian lines. Shultz, as well as the president, also blamed Syria's ally, the Soviet Union.
It would be a disaster if a force took over the Middle East, and a force is ready to do that, as witness what has taken place in Yemen, in Ethiopia, and now the forces that several thousand that are there in Syria. The free world cannot stand by and see that happen.
Administration sources concede the ability of the U.S. to retaliate is nearly impossible. A strike against Syria, for instance, risks involvement with some 7,000 Soviet advisors supporting the Syrian army. But there are some strategic options under consideration. If it is shown that Iran was behind the attack, one possibility, a tilt toward Iraq, by supplying Iran's archenemy with aid and weapons. Another option, urging Israel to take a more active and military role in maintaining peace in Lebanon. A high-level U.S. delegation is scheduled to travel to Israel next week. While the president weighs the options, he is determined that the U.S. not be perceived as standing alone in the Middle East. Secretary of State Shultz will travel to Paris on Friday to meet with leaders of the other multinational force nations to work out a coordinated policy and to discuss whether the force should be broadened by asking other nations to contribute troops. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
Facing a December deployment of U.S. nuclear missiles in Western Europe, the Soviet Union said today it is doing preparatory work to deploy missiles of its own in Eastern Europe, specifically in Czechoslovakia and East Germany. While the Warsaw Pact has threatened to do this, today's word from Moscow was the first official claim that the basing is actually beginning.